In the Australian Capital Territory, where I lived, to get your motorcycle license, you must attend several one-day motorcycle courses at various times throughout your provisional license period. These courses consist of basic motorcycle handling and braking skills. Although it's important to learn these skills, another great thing about the courses is that it brings you into contact with other budding motorcyclists, and you can trade stories and experiences of motorcycle riding. This is where I first heard about the Clyde. The King's Highway is the road colloquially known by Canberra motorcyclists as the Clyde. The road runs from Canberra to Batemans Bay, which is a beautiful beach town, and the road passes over the Clyde mountain. The road takes the name the Clyde from this mountain. The road is renowned by Canberrans for its scenic views and the beautiful live curves which wind up and down the mountains. The road is not only scenic, but it also ends on the southeast coastline of Australia. And so, every weekend, especially in the summer, there is an exodus of Canberrans along this road to the coast. While the Clyde is a fantastic road, there is another road which I would place as my favourite road which I've ever ridden in Australia. Not only is this road a pleasure to ride, but the towns and sights along the road are gorgeous, and the rich landscape through which the road runs not only guarantees the enjoyment of the road, but ensures that repeat rides are a must. This road travels through Kangaroo Valley and is called Vale Road. Both the Clyde and Vale Road form a nice loop, beginning in Canberra, leading down to the coast, continuing along the coast and up through picturesque Kangaroo Valley. Then it follows the Hume Highway and finally ends back in Canberra. This was the route I took one weekend. It was the end of winter and spring was nearing. The weather hadn't quite warmed up enough for it to be nice motorcycling weather, but I was so stressed from being cooped up in Canberra that I decided to travel down to the coast anyway. I just had to get out of the city. After packing up my gear on a Friday afternoon, I headed out of Canberra. The afternoon was grey and cold, and even with thermals on underneath my jeans and leather jacket, I was still freezing. I had recently discovered hand warmers at the local camping store. These small beanbag devices generate heat once they're opened. I stuck one of these in the inside pocket of my motorcycle jacket, and it kept my stomach warm for most of the trip. With the cold and dreary weather, I couldn't be bothered filming the road down to Batemans Bay. If you do want to see what it looks like, there is footage of the Clyde in the first part of my video series on the Great Ocean Road, which I'll link in the video description. The true star of this video is not the Clyde, it's Vale Road. And before I start talking about Vale Road, I need to talk about Depot Beach. One of my co-workers had described Depot Beach on the east coast of Australia as her favourite place in the world, and after camping there I can understand why. The beach isn't particularly special, but you can camp in the national park not 50 metres from the beach and fall asleep listening to the waves breaking on the shore. The night I camped at Depot Beach there was a full moon, and the forest around the beach was lit up with moonlight. I took a walk down to the beach. I wish I had the camera equipment to capture how the beach looked that night. It was truly spectacular. The campsite is full of wildlife, and most of it is so used to people that possums and kangaroos will come right up to you. While I was reading in my tent, with the front of the tent door open, a kangaroo came right up to the tent and almost poked its head right through the front of the tent inside. Possums swarm over the campground as well and will knock over your cooking gear to get at any tasty treats that they can find. Even though it was still August and it would be freezing in Canberra, here on the coast I slept with the flap of my tent open and was snug inside my winter sleeping bag. I watched the full moon slowly shift through the trees until I fell asleep. The next morning, I went on a short walk through a small reserve of rainforest, and the air noticeably cooled as I walked under the shady trees. I continued to ride along the coast to Ulladulla and Nowra. This road isn't particularly scenic, but if you have the time to explore the roads branching off from the main highway, you'll see beautiful beaches and thick forests. There really is a lot to see on this stretch of coast, and even more as you leave Nowra and ride into Kangaroo Valley. The Princes Highway begins from the coast and climbs up into the hills. From here, when you reach the highest point of the mountains before you descend into Kangaroo Valley, you can make a sharp turn off the road. Following a poorly maintained road, you eventually reach a cafe that is situated right on the edge of the mountain facing towards the coast, and you will see truly breathtaking views there. You can see all the way to the coast and beyond, out to sea. This particular stretch of road was actually the reason which I first bought a GoPro and started filming my road trips. When I first rode through this area, I was so astounded by the curves of the road, the green rainforest, the views from the side of the mountain, that I knew I needed to buy a GoPro and film this area. Now, a year later, I was back and filming that stretch of road. Once you descend into Kangaroo Valley, the road unwinds into a straight, pleasant ride. I'd recommend you stay in the town itself. There's plenty to see in the small boutique shops in the town, and even more to see in the bushwalking tracks surrounding the town. I stayed at Glenmac Park, which is a gorgeous little caravan park right in the center of town, with views up the valley and into the sunset. In the town, you can see the Hampden Bridge, a one-lane sandstone bridge on the edge of the township. Even though the bridge's one lane is a bottleneck in the traffic traveling through the town, the bridge has remained untouched, and rightfully so. The bridge is a scenic reminder of the colonial past. The bridge is modelled after medieval architecture and looks eerily out of place in the Australian landscape at first, but it also suits the landscape in a way. Kangaroo Valley is so quaint that the bridge adds a fairy tale atmosphere which suits the town quite well. The bridge was built in 1898 and was named after the Governor of New South Wales at the time, Lord Hampden. I've taken a few paragraphs from the Kangaroo Valley Chamber for Tourism and Commerce so that you can understand the importance of this bridge. Quote, "The early lumber gatherers and dairymen who came to the valley did so by following the ancient Aboriginal tracks from the south coast and the southern highlands, and also by boat up the Shoalhaven River. The Kangaroo River could be crossed at various natural fords, but in flood times this was very dangerous. So various settlements were established either side of the river and had their own churches, schools, and post offices. Many families felt isolated, though some social gatherings were held in private homes. It was particularly tough and lonely for the women, who were often confined to the homestead due to domestic duties. The township of Kangaroo Valley developed trading centres, a school, hotel, and social facilities ahead of Barangarry, Bendeela, Budgong, and Upper River. Commercial and social interactions between settlers on the southern and northern banks of the river were limited by the use of horses and bullock. The building of the first wooden bridge in 1879 and the Hampden Bridge in 1898 were important factors for change and growth in the valley. After you pass through Kangaroo Valley, you will reach Fitzroy Falls, which I've been told is the gateway to many amazing bushwalks, but I still need to find the time to try them out for myself. The last big town before you reach the Hume Highway is Vale, the town for which the Vale Road is named. Vale is a nice town, much like the other towns on the southeast coast, but one thing makes Vale stand out for me. There is a huge abandoned brewery in Vale, which until recently was open to the public. And by open to the public, I mean that there were no fences keeping people out, so technically you were able to enter. The first time I was at the brewery, the ruin was open and you could explore the derelict building and even climb the stairs all the way to the 4th floor if you dared. This time, when I visited the brewery, it was closed off and surrounded by a chain link fence with barbed wire at the top. Who knows whether this will remain the same, but I decided to leave the brewery as it is this time, because I figured that if somebody took the effort to fence off the brewery, then it was probably for a good reason. I do have video from the last time I was at the brewery though. Unfortunately, this video that I took was when I was relatively inexperienced with my camera, and I accidentally filmed it at 4K resolution and at 15 frames a second, which makes the footage basically unwatchable every time I move the camera too fast. I decided that since I can't get better footage, I'll try and salvage my old footage, and this is the result. I also managed to grab a bunch of still images from the video, which show a lot of the interior state of the brewery. After seeing the brewery and passing through Vale, you reach the Hume Highway. You can head back to Canberra along this highway, but if you wanted to continue your adventure, then you could ride to Goulburn and head up into the Blue Mountains, which I've already made a video about, so check that out if you want to. Thanks for watching, and I hope you take this ride sometime soon and experience Kangaroo Valley for yourself.